Buenos días. Bienvenidos a la Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de la Misión Shawnee. Quien quiera que seas, quien quiere que ames, donde quiera que estés en el viaje de tu vida, eres bienvenido aquí.
Good morning. My name is Karen Burgee, and I am very honored to be your worship associate today. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. We are so happy that you've chosen this sanctuary and time, and that you're here is something to celebrate. We extend an especially warm welcome to our visitors. We'll be waiting to chat with you at the welcome desk after the service. Remember, we were all newcomers once. And if you're joining us online, please say hi in the chat. We now invite everyone to rise and greet each other. Announcements.
I am pleased to say that we are once again partnering with the Lyric Opera of Kansas City to host a free performance of Maya and the Magic Ring. In this new opera for families, a young girl, Maya, discovers a dazzling ruby ring in her grandmother's belongings. She rubs the jewel and accidentally releases a genie. This free performance will take place here in the sanctuary on Wednesday, April 9th at 6:30 p.m. This is through the Lyric Opera, as I've said. We need help spreading the word. Postcards are available at the front desk. Please invite your friends and all the people in your local community to attend. And now, as part of our stewardship campaign, we do a weekly staff highlight. Today, I'm so happy to highlight the work of our own Dr. Jen Lacey. Jen has worked here for 3 years, and in such a short time, she has brought us so much education, depth, and attention to long-term health. She has an uncanny sense of tailoring her classes to the needs of the congregation and leads with such vulnerability and integrity. Her work has had a huge impact on us already. Some of the highlights of the last 3 years are her anti-racism adult education courses, her work with the Tall in the Fall group to bring us annual Earth-based cycles during which we follow a slow, intentional process of setting goals and then celebrating our progress. And lastly, she's led the whole RE department so well in creating more intergenerational programming, like the winter pageant, SMUUCh Con, and the recent winter formal. And now here she is to give us her fun fact.
Good morning. My fun fact is I live in the historic northeast Kansas City neighborhood of Pendleton Heights. I have lived in 2 homes in this neighborhood, and both were once owned by members of the Kansas City Mafia. And both homes have contained trapped doors. Thank you.
And now I'm very pleased to invite Allison forward to give her stewardship testimony.
Good morning. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Allison Blakely, and my husband Greg and I have been coming to SMUUCh now for about a year, and we just absolutely love it here. I was raised in a fairly high-demand religion. My parents converted to Mormonism before I was born, and it played a big role in my upbringing. Even as a child, I felt cognitive dissonance. When I was 8 years old, we were at church one day, and my dad told me to pay special attention because there was going to be a historical announcement. That announcement turned out to be that Black members could now receive all of the church's blessings. To be clear, before that, they were excluded from this just based on their skin color, no matter what kind of member they were, how faithful, or what have you. My reaction, even as an 8-year-old, was, why would God exclude anybody trying to better themselves in the first place? I was stunned that my parents had accepted this because while they were in school in Johns Hopkins, they rallied and protested and supported civil rights movements, and there were the pictures to prove it. They were there. I could not understand it. How could they be part of any church that limited participation based on skin color? Not to mention the logistics. Okay, so what happens? Let's assume this really does come from God. So what happens next? Could people really be not okay one second and okay the next second? I mean, were people grandfathered in? What? Was there like some kind of age cutoff? So I tried to ask my dad these questions, and he shushed me and told me that God had a plan and it would all work out. From then on, I felt severe, what I now know as cognitive dissonance. Anytime I or anybody in the church tried to question its teachings, we were shut down. We were told, we were shushed, we were strongly discouraged. We were told that it was wrong for us to think that we were smarter than God and that the Lord works in his own way and things would work out. People who questioned had a lack of faith, and the church's leaders were never wrong. People were shamed for not following Mormon teachings to the letter. At 12, I went to a teenage girls' class, and as a lesson on remaining pure until you were married, they had a chocolate bar lesson. The leader of the group held up a chocolate bar, and of course, who wants this? Oh, all of us, wonderful. But then she took the wrapper off, and she passed it around to each one of us. And she said, okay, when it came back to her after we'd all touched it, she said, okay, who wants it now? So anybody who did not conform with this or other teachings in the church were considered dirty and shameful. Kids and adults alike who stepped out of line even in the slightest little bit faced discipline, exclusion, and even expulsion from the church. And there were many rules. One day the church decided that body piercings, including double piercing holes, were unacceptable. So I had to take out one of my sets of earrings, which as soon as I quit the church, I got re-pierced. But there were so many rules to follow. We were told exactly what to think, and what the leader said was final. Meetings always almost focused on defending the church's beliefs and praising the leaders rather than helping others. I often felt bored at the best or appalled by what I heard, but I had to hide my reactions, forcing a smile and nodding mindlessly. Even though I mentally detached as much as possible, it was painful. In my experience, Mormons even excluded other members for not towing the line in the religion. You could be excluded for not conforming to the church's expectations perfectly, being mentally ill, or even having a different gender identity or sexuality. The church's politics towards the LGBTQ community were and remain cruel and ridiculous. For decades, I felt like I was the problem. If only I would pray more, if only I would do more things and study their scriptures, I would be a better person. I would have faith. Finally, over 10 years ago, I had enough. And I decided that if I was wrong in my doubts, I did not want to be right. So there were consequences, including the ending of my first marriage, the loss of some friends, and so on. But I was luckier than most. I found things like Buddhist meditation in the last few years. I learned a lot about perspective, treating people well, Dharma. I loved the Buddhist community, but I felt like it was, instead of being more like along a life's path, I felt like it was more like going to the gym or something where it was like good for you, and it definitely was, and there are many wonderful things. So fast forward, Greg and I decided to get married, and I moved to Kansas because my job was more portable than Greg's, and he was out here at this time. After Greg quit the church, the Mormon church, he was still a member because he was worried that his kids would disown him if he quit. Wrap your head around that for a minute. So after he quit, we decided that although both of us both of us knew what we did not believe, we really didn't know what we believed and where our life's journey was going to take us. Several people along the way that I've met are UU, and I respect them very much, so we landed here one Sunday. Imagine our pleasant surprise when the first thing we heard was, "Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here." Followed not too long after that by Daniel Doss's song, "We Are Widening Our Circle," which still moves me every time I hear it. The meeting that day just so happened to be about welcoming and inclusion. There was a champagne brunch afterwards, which was just like awesome, right? At first, to be honest, given my experiences in the past, I was very nervous to go to the brunch because guess what? We had all been given a piece of candy. And I found out we had to sit at those tables corresponding with our candy. Well, Greg, the only person I knew, had Smarties. I had a Tootsie Roll. I did not want to go. I was afraid of being excluded at the Tootsie Roll table, that all these people would know each other, whatever. So I totally palmed the Tootsie Roll, and I sat at the Smartie table. So needless to say, the people at our Smartie table were just absolutely lovely and welcoming, and we enjoyed talking with them very much. In fact, during the brunch, people would walk around and we were meeting people, and it was wonderful. And in fact, at the very end, I actually started to sit at the Tootsie Roll table. And Greg even joined me. I'm like, no, you're at the Smartie table, you know? So, okay, the sermons here are wonderful. Early on, I came to church, glued the smile on my face, getting ready to do this, and said, wait a minute. Instead of being told exactly what to believe, we were treated to inspirational quotes and messages. We were given questions. For example, one of the most profound questions I've heard here was right after the election, when Rev Rose talked about other groups and apocalypses that have happened in other cultures. And she was talking about what they learned from it. Her question to us, which I still ask myself, is what are we to learn from this apocalypse? Which, I mean, to me at least, the election felt like it was pretty apocryphal, or however you say that. So what are we to learn from this? She didn't tell us what to learn. It's just a question that always goes through my mind. So yes, I still nod my head now, but is in agreement, or it is to say, yes, what a great point. I was so uncomfortable with that, with actually having to not detach at first, but I am so glad that I worked through it. There are also many opportunities through SMUUCh to educate ourselves about the world around us. There was an open house about an Israeli and Palestinian documentary that just taught me so much that I never knew. SMUUCh helps offer ways to help and serve in our community, such as speaking on current events. For example, a community homeless shelter was being debated, and so we were pointing in the right direction of where we could speak our piece supporting it. Recently, SMUUCh hosted a training, and all I want to say about specifics is that it was on aiding a marginalized group with resources and next steps provided to help these vulnerable people in this scary, scary time. I love being surrounded with others with the same values and having opportunities for social justice. It is very comforting in these scary times. Greg and I also contribute our money to worthy causes, many of which we find out through SMUUCh. Coming from a church that was recently fined by the SEC for hiding money, Greg and I are very grateful for the financial transparency at SMUUCh. They post their budget in many ways, and it is very transparent, so we know what we are supporting, and we fully support it and are glad for the opportunity to contribute. So that is my experience here.
And now we have one final announcement from Fisk.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to ask Allison Blakely, Annette Box, and Vicki Trott to join me up here at the dais. This is the 5th Sunday of our stewardship campaign, which means that we have 3 weeks left until the end of the campaign. 76 families have made their pledges. So thank you very much if you have made your pledge. But what this means is that something over 100 families have not made their pledges yet. So, this is what's going to happen next. One of the 4 of us will be calling you if you have not made your pledge and asking you to make your pledge. Let's do a creative visualization here. First, let me say that these will be friendly calls, fully consistent with Unitarian principles and values. So let's imagine when you get this call that you are able to say, we have just made our pledge. Imagine the warm glow that you would experience and the euphoria as we thank you for supporting our church. Okay, why is this so important? Why am I up here making this announcement? Because what's going to happen is, by the end of our stewardship campaign, if we've reached our goal, well, hallelujah, blessed be, and let the potluck luncheon commence. However, if we have not made our goal, then the staff must work with the board to come up with a revised budget that's balanced. They must have the total pledge number in order to do that. And then with that balanced budget, which will involve removing things from the proposed budget that we're trying to meet, then at the annual meeting in May, that budget will be presented to the congregation, and we will look over the things that we had to cut because we didn't have sufficient funds for it. So this is how the stewardship campaign works, and this is why it's so important, if you have not yet made your pledge, to go ahead and do so in the coming few weeks. Thank you. And thank all of you for helping me with this effort.
Today during the sermon, we will be discussing the work of Archbishop Oscar Romero, and thus there will be some references to human rights violations in just the sermon part of the service. So I encourage you to be discretionary about whether or not you want your small children in here during the sermon. And after the time for all ages, all the kids will leave, and you're welcome to send your kiddos off. In Unitarian Universalism, we have many aspects of our liturgy that we use to create space and center ourselves, and we begin with our ringing bowl. Our call to worship is from the U.S. Poet Laureate Ada Limon in a poem called Instructions on Not Giving Up. More than the fuchsia funnels breaking out of the crabapple tree, more than the neighbor's almost obscene display of cherry limbs shoving their cotton candy-colored blossoms to the slate sky of spring rains, it's the greening of the trees that really gets me. When all the shock of white and taffy, the world's baubles and trinkets leave the pavement strewn with the confetti of aftermath, the leaves come. Patient, plodding, a green skin growing over whatever winter did to us. A return to the strange idea of continuous living despite the mess of us, the hurt, the empty. Fine then, I'll take it, the trees seem to say. A new slick leaf unfurling like a fist to an open palm. I'll take it all. Come, let us worship. Please rise as you're willing and able for hymn number 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing, singing for our lives.
As Norman comes forward to light our chalice, we invite you to join us as we recite our covenant. Let us affirm that love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Could we have all the children come forward? Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi. Hi, everybody. What's up? Can hardly see you over there. What are they, chopped liver? Ellie said, there's like no one up here. Look at all these beautiful children.
Rev Rose, I noticed before the service that you welcomed everyone in Spanish. I think that's really cool. How long have you been speaking in Spanish?
Well, I took 12 years of Spanish in elementary school and high school, but it was pretty clear that I really did not want to learn Spanish, because 12 years now of dedicated education would get me pretty far. So I guess I was exposed as a child, but I really started learning Spanish in my marriage, because I was told that if I wanted to have kids, I needed to speak to them in Spanish by my spouse. So I did. Yeah. What about you guys? Do you guys know any Spanish words? Does anybody know any Spanish words? What's a word you know in Spanish? Yeah. Rosa? Yeah, that's my name. And what does that mean? It means pink. Yeah, like the color of your shoes. Mm-hmm. What other words do we know? How about hola? What does that mean? Hello. What about gato? Meow, meow. What other words do we know in Spanish? Yeah. Perro? Uh-huh. Arf, arf. This is a fun game. You guys do animals and I'll make the noise. Yeah? Pass? Who knows what pass means? Pace. Close. Fish is pace. Pass is peace. Jen, do you know any Spanish?
I do know a little bit of Spanish, and my family really values speaking multiple languages. In fact, my son, we send him to a Spanish immersion school in the city, but I'm really hesitant to speak it because I'm always afraid I'll mess up and look silly. I wonder, have you experienced this as you've been learning Spanish?
Yes, learning a second language is deeply humiliating. Yeah. It's so terrible. Anna had me, she was like, why don't you go to the store and buy a pound of chicken breast? And I wrote my sentence on a piece of paper. I'll never forget this. I walked so I could practice. I got there. I was like sweating profusely. I said the words. They seemed to have taken. I mean, I was so nervous to even try it. And I remember that all the guys in the carniceria, the meat counter, were so kind to me. They clapped. They were like, you did it, girl. Like, look at you. And that really stuck with me, how kind they were to me, because I was so nervous. And I also am grateful that I'm in a family, because they have like Rosisms, which are like the ways that I say things wrong. So that's very kind, as opposed to making fun of me. Do you guys have anyone in your schools who's learning English? Yeah, there are definitely kids in all your schools who are learning English. Mm-hmm. You know, Anna told me a story that when she got to kindergarten and she was learning English, during show and tell, she stood up and told everybody that every night she writes in her diarrhea. Yeah. I guess I tell you this because it's so hard to learn another language that anytime you hear somebody practicing English, starting to speak English, just be so kind and supportive. We do not have that culture here in the U.S. around non-English speakers, but you just be patient and listen and ask questions.
Speaking of that, do you think you could teach us some Spanish today that will be included in our service?
Yes, we're going to use 4 Spanish words during the service today during songs. So who knows what amor means? Love, yeah. Oh. I wonder if you're going to get the other ones too, huh? Okay, so this is when we're singing the kids out, may the spirit of amor surround you. We're going to sing it. And then corazón, which means heart. We're going to sing that in the Joys and Sorrows song, in a shared corazón. And then alma, which means soul. Return to the home of your alma, we'll sing in the meditative hymn. And then fuego, which means fire, we'll sing in the closing hymn. And you guys can take it upon yourselves to learn a little bit of Spanish in the coming week. You may go to your classes.
Now in peace, may the spirit of amor surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Each month, we as a community take time to reflect on a theme. The children do this in their classes, and we do it here in worship and in our small groups. This month, the theme is trust. Jeremy Lynch said, trust in trust. Trust in the fact that trusting won't always take you where you want to go, but not trusting never will. I have a tendency to trust everybody until that person becomes untrustworthy. This has helped me to grow and to become who I am. But it has also backfired, as there are those who have taken advantage of me and used my trust to betray me. In both situations, I have learned and grown from them. Besides my husband, who's in Turkey, by the way, I have a friend in Texas whom I trust implicitly. He has helped me through both trust and mistrust by just being there when I needed someone to listen to me. He just listens and then asks questions to help me understand what I am feeling. Several months ago, I suffered a crushing blow to my trust. It was a complete betrayal of all the trust I had placed in some people. But it also questioned myself, my trust in myself. How had I not seen what was happening? How did I miss all the red flags? I think it is because I tend to see people as good. And I had a goal in mind of being ordained a deacon. Trusting in myself has not been easy, and I have learned to trust my gut with people now. When it came to that breaking point, I trusted myself enough to know that it was time to leave that situation. Trusting in ourselves is not easy, but we need to develop those gut feelings and truly trust them. After the incident, I spoke with my husband and my friend in Texas, and I was reassured by them that leaving was the best thing for me to do. So instead of not trusting people anymore, I decided to trust people I knew. I relied on my family and my good friends. Sorry. But most importantly, I decided to return to SMUUCh. Part of me was afraid I would be rejected because I had left, but that did not happen. People I knew from 3 years ago and people I have met through events here were so happy to see me. My trust in this congregation was renewed and bolstered by that welcome from those who knew me and from those who didn't. Trusting again has paid off in big dividends. Will I ever trust those people at my former church? No. No. But the trust I had in returning to SMUUCh more than makes up for the hurt and betrayal I suffered. So do not be afraid to trust. because trusting will help you on your journey, but without trust, you will never move forward.
La tristeza de mis ojos que lloran en silencio por tu amor. Me miro en el espejo y veo mi rostro del tiempo que he sufrido por tu adiós. Obligo a que te olvide el pensamiento, pues siempre estoy pensando en el ayer. Prefiero estar dormido que despierto, por tanto que me duele que no estés. Como quisiera que tú vivieras, que tus ojitos jamás se hubieran cerrado nunca y estar mirándolos. Amor eterno, inolvidable. Tarde o temprano estaré contigo para seguir amándonos.
We come to this place to see and be seen, to teach and be taught, to hear and be heard. I invite you to reach over and nudge the person sitting next to you, reminding them and yourselves that we are gathered here together in peace and in authenticity and in intention. We also come to this place to share our joys and sorrows. If you have a rare joy or a profound sorrow, you are welcome to come forward and share in 2 to 3 sentences and light a candle.
It's still Fisk Miles. I'm lighting a candle of joy and happiness for our potluck of the Irish dinner last night, which was wonderful. Many people attended to it. The food was delicious, and it is just such a pleasure to be in community with people in this church and have dinner together. We do this the third or fourth Saturday of every month, and if you are interested, please reach out to me, and we'll see about having you join us for potluck dinner. Thank you.
I have a wonderful joy. I'm Karen Burgee. My grandson was released from the hospital this week. He's back on Medicaid. His medications are working, and he is aspiring to find a job.
This is a candle of joy. Some of you may have seen a little blue car in the parking lot for like a week. That was my little blue car that would not start. I have now gotten a new car, so this is my joyful candle.
We talk about trust, and I can't really look at you, but we talk about trust, and for 20 years I had none in anybody. But with my wife, I had absolute trust from someone who'd never given it her whole life. So it's a big deal to me to trust people.
I'm Alyssa, and this is Candle of Hope. I've been really struggling in a lot of ways over the past few weeks, and things are a little better, but if you could just keep me in your thoughts, hopefully things get better.
Yeah, I guess I'm doing this. Gratitude. January 28th, my 31-year marriage ended, leaving me virtually homeless. But through the grace of friends, I stayed at an extended stay, and why I stand here grateful, I now have a permanent placement at an assisted living facility. I accepted it on Friday with no furniture. As of Monday, this past Monday, I have furniture through the goodness of people. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle, and I am actually expressing a joy because I, for the second Saturday in a row, have participated in the Tesla takedown. We go over to the Tesla. We go over to the Tesla dealership at State Line and at 103rd, and I have a sign that says "Honk to deport Elon," and it makes me very happy. So if you want to join us, it's 12 to 2 on Saturdays at State Line and 103rd. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Grace Ann Sandry. This is a candle of joy to express gratitude and thanks for the Women in Femmes spring equinox meeting we had this past, I think it was Wednesday. It was very joyful and a lovely way to start to celebrate spring. And I want to thank everyone who not only, I wasn't a part of the planning, but there was a lot of planning involved, and want to thank them for that.
I want to light a candle in memory of Jackie Robinson and the Tuskegee Airmen and all of those people of color who our government, the current regime in Washington, tried to eliminate last week out of the history. And you don't screw with Jackie Robinson.
Let us sing together.
We hear your words, we witness your life in all of its heaviness, in all of its brilliance, and we carry your joys and sorrows in a shared corazón.
Please make yourselves comfortable, putting your feet flat on the floor. This is a bilingual reading of Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. Ahora contaremos 12 y nos quedamos todos quietos. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Por una vez sobre la tierra, no hablemos en ningún idioma. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for a second, not move our arms so much. Sería un minuto fragante, sin prisa, sin locomotoras. Todos estaríamos juntos en una inquietud instantánea. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would not look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, se pondrían un traje puro y andarían con sus hermanos por la sombra sin hacer nada. Those who prepare wars would put on clean clothes and walk around with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. La vida es solo lo que se hace, no quiero nada con la muerte. Life is what it is about. I want nothing with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Ahora contaré hasta 12, y tú te callas, y me voy. Now I'll count to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. Please remain seated for our meditative hymn.
Return again, return again, return to the home of your Alma. Return again.
You ever think you could cry so hard that there'd be nothing left in you? Like how the wind shakes a tree in a storm until every part of it is run through with wind? I live in the low parts now. Most days a little hazy with fever and waiting for the waters to stop shivering out of the body. Funny thing about grief, its hold is so bright and determined like a flame, like almost something worth living for. This was called After the Fire by Ada Limon.
A cruel man once said that the fundamental weakness of Western society is empathy. It was Elon Musk who said it, and he went on to say that they're exploiting the empathy response in Western civilization, that to be empathetic is to be programmed like a robot. It comes as no surprise to me that he said this, as he benefits personally from this wave of racism and hatred and exploitation. It's in his best interest that the American people close off, live in fear of our neighbors, and continue to believe that we don't have enough. Indeed, what we have here is a good old-fashioned fear-mongering in the Americas. I'll never forget the Lenexa Town Hall meeting earlier this year about putting in a new shelter, the La Quinta Project, where people from our own community got up and spoke passionately about how afraid they were of an alien invasion, by which they were referring to immigration. It became clear to me then just how dramatically the topic of immigration has been leveraged by the Trump campaign. Yes, this terrible racism is rearing its ugly, ugly head, and it has no place in the hearts of people of faith. We must stay in our space of empathy and compassion and humanity and do what is within our power to understand the fullness of the situation. For of course, it is truly in all of our collective best interest to remember that even in the face of authoritarianism, human empathy is the core of any society's strength, and surely how we and all of our ancestors survived. As a people of faith, we are called to be with those in our midst who are victims of injustice. So today I want to tell you a story of a time and of a people of faith who found themselves bound up in a government that had lost its empathy for its people, and how they responded. It was a time of great inhumanity that is inextricably linked to our own country's great struggles with violence and war. And thus, let us begin with the question that lingered on the minds of these people of faith. In the face of injustice, how political do we get? In the face of injustice, how political do we get? This was essentially the question that Archbishop Oscar Romero asked of Pope Paul VI in 1979. You may have heard of Archbishop Oscar Romero because of how influential he became in his small, beautiful country of El Salvador, from which he had traveled all the way to Rome in hopes of being understood by the Pope, because Pope Paul VI himself had stood against the Nazis with the Catholic Church. But unfortunately for Romero and his country, the Pope did not understand what was happening in El Salvador and gave an answer that made sense to him in his European context. The Pope told Romero to remain undivided on the issues politically and thus stick together with the Catholic Church as an institution. But in El Salvador, a country so Catholic that it was named El Salvador, the Savior, the Catholic Church was already divided with two distinct viewpoints. The first had emerged all across the Americas after Vatican II with something called liberation theology. Liberation theology was the school that I was trained in, and it basically sees that the Bible gives preferential option to the poor, meaning that God is on the side of those in poverty and does not favor wealth hoarding at the expense of human dignity. Therefore, all across Latin America, there came a sense that priests should be called upon to view extreme poverty as blasphemous and against God's wishes. But there was another church operating simultaneously in El Salvador, which was the church as an institution that was being paid off by a group of people called the 14 families, which is how they were referred to and are still referred to in El Salvador. The 14 families who owned the land and lived wealthy lives off their plantations that the rest of the people worked on. Now, these families paid large sums to the Catholic Church, and in return, the church preached that the people's reward will be in the next life. Not here, not now, but coming in exchange for their subservience and their acceptance of a malnutrition so profound that I heard a story about a woman who had 14 children and only 6 survived past 6 months. That level of malnutrition was what the people were living in. And furthermore, the people not only were paid by the 14 families, they got their credit through the 14 families, shopped at stores owned by them, in an inescapable cycle that Vatican II had just called out as unjust. Around this time, the presiding archbishop announced his retirement, and the 14 families needed to find a priest who was apolitical, quiet, and leaned conservative. And so they found a priest of a small village who for 22 years had officiated funerals and given advice to the townspeople who had not expressed any anti-malicious sentiment or gotten too involved with liberation theology, Oscar Romero. To learn about him and this story, I listened to a truly wonderful podcast called Sacred Scandal, Nation of Saints by Jasmine Romero, no relation. I highly recommend it, that you listen to it. So they whisked little provincial Oscar out of the countryside and thrust him suddenly into the position of highest ranking bishop in the entire country. He now suddenly delivered mass in the catedral, the main cathedral, and now he went calling on his people not into the village, but into the city of San Salvador. And what he found there was that people were suffering not just poverty, but also under the extreme influence of the militia. In the first week of his archbishophood, a right-wing president was elected in a fraudulent election, and students began being killed when protesting. Soon enough, priests who supported their people's needs for a better life began being disappeared. There were helicopters that flew over the city that poured flyers out of them that had on them the slogan, Haga patria, mate un cura, which means be a patriot, kill a priest, with a list of priests' names underneath it. And one of the priests who was killed was Oscar Romero's best friend, Rutilio. The week after Rutilio was tortured and killed, the archbishop did something that had never been done before. He told all the other priests that their services were canceled, and he held the first ever United Mass on the radio. And in that moment, he came out on the side of the priests. And over the next 3 years, as priests were killed one by one, being labeled unionists or informants, the people remembered them as young and loving servants who called on their people and believed them. It was an organized and systematic move to kill all the clergy who served the people and believed that their oppression and poverty was unjust in the eyes of God. Meanwhile, Monsignor Romero risked his life every time he performed the rituals of Mass. Every time he spoke to a foreign official, he risked humiliation and rejection. Like when he came to the US to ask Jimmy Carter, who for all intents and purposes was a humanitarian president, to stop aid from going to the militia in El Salvador. After that meeting, Romero returned on March 24th, 1980, 45 years ago this Monday, and he gave a beautiful homily that came out on the side of the people. He named everyone who had been killed that week by the militia and said, I would like to make a special appeal to the men of the army, specifically to the ranks of the National Guard, the police, and the military. Brothers, you come from your own people. You are killing your own brothers. Because, he said finally, debe de prevalecer la ley de Dios que dice no matar, which means the law of God should thrive, which says, do not kill. The first of all 10 commandments, to which so many people, including our country, including the church, were turning a blind eye to. After he preached, Archbishop Oscar Romero raised a chalice above his head while offering communion. A red VW bug pulled up not 40 paces in front of him and shot him through the heart, killed by the shrapnel in his body. He was the first bishop in 900 years to die in a church. The next day, the U.S. aid package to back the militia was approved, and El Salvador was launched into decades of civil war funded and supported by the U.S., during which we not only gave $4 billion in U.S. aid to the militia without checks or balances, but we also trained and impassioned the leaders of it at the School of the Americas, which put 12 U.S.-trained dictators through Latin America. The war in El Salvador left 100,000 people dead, 40% of which were not in combat, but people who were taken from their homes at night. And over 1 million people dispersed across the globe seeking asylum and safety across borders. Only 2% of the asylum cases from El Salvador were ever entertained, because to do so would be to admit that our country was not just complicit, but funded the military that killed with such impunity and terror, and that we caused this level of human suffering. Because prior to this period, there were very few people who left their beautiful country of El Salvador. As I traced Oscar Romero's journey, I saw that it was about him coming to understand what it is that people really go through, who his people really were, and what his role as a clergy person was to the people around him who suffered. And I feel similarly now as I see my people suffering, because my people are Latino people, our people are Latino people, our neighbors, our friends, my family. In fact, my wife's aunt, Berta Amalia, who I've never met, was a medical student in Guatemala, and she was on her way to El Salvador on New Year's Eve in the early 1980s when she, her husband, and their infant son, Ana's cousin Roberto, were murdered together in a car bomb, because she served indigenous people in her practice. This violence and the aftermath is very close to home, even if we can't see it. It's in all of our communities and in our schools, in our children's schools, and it is our calling as people of faith in a moment to serve and understand the people in our midst who are suffering. For the effects of this violence that was ravaged was a joint effort across the Americas, and it haunts us as our neighbors live in fear of what our government is doing in our country now to increase racism and hatred towards people. It's disgusting and despicable, and hate has no place in our world. The School of the Americas, do you know what it is now? It's the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation, and it's where ICE agents are trained. Separating families, like so many people fear these days, is inhumane, and just another example of what happens when we turn off our empathy. When one decides that some people deserve a good quality of life while others deserve to be tortured and live in fear, perhaps being punished for their survival when all the powers across the Americas so clearly wanted them gone. But I didn't even really care when he renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Because yes, Mexico is America too. And I thought, thank you for your forward thinking, Donald Trump, in acknowledging our shared heritage, because truly we share so much already. We share communities, we share a country, we share a love of the earth and art and beauty, and we also share a distaste of ese pinche viejo, which is how Donald Trump is described by many of my friends who fear deportation, and it basically means that darn old man in the White House. But even more so, we share a universalism. For the liberation theology of Vatican II tells us that it is our human dignity and our treatment of those who suffer that makes the sacred path, that it is our empathy that calls us forward into the world we've dreamed of, one where we have an intelligent female president with an 87% approval rate who is swiftly moving the country towards zero emissions. Oh wait, that's Mexico. I joke, but whenever I talk to our neighbors and friends, and even people who I met in Mexico, I get asked, ¿Hay Latinos en tu iglesia? Do you preach in Spanish? Because when I talk about our faith, there is a wish and a hunger, like each of us have felt, to explore our faith free of doctrine, to be part of a faith that serves the people and enacts justice, that is in solidarity with the poor, like liberation theology teaches, and not in solidarity with the oligarchy. The Unitarian Universalist in me is hungry to support the people's spiritual lives and to provide any and every alternative to Christian nationalism, which you probably know was the foundation of Trump's campaign and is the idea that Christian people have the divine right to govern the United States. Or like in El Salvador, that you could buy the divine right to govern. Is that so different than what we have here? Was this election not bought and won through the church? How political do we get? I'll let Oscar Romero answer his own question and close with quoting his final sermon given just moments before he was killed. He was, of course, a Catholic, and rather than alter his theology, I've let his words speak as they were. He said, "Each week, I go about the country listening to the cries of the people, their pain from so much crime, so much violence. The church, the people of God in history, is not attached to any social system, to any political organization, to any party. The church does not identify herself with any of those forces because she is the eternal pilgrim of history and is indicating at every historical moment what reflects the kingdom of God and what does not. She is the servant. Therefore, it's fine to be organized into popular groups. It's all right to form political parties. It's all right to take part in the government. It's fine as long as you carry the reflection of the kingdom of God and try to establish it where you are working, and as long as you are not being used to further worldly ambitions. Any historical plan that's not based on the dignity of the human being, the love of God, the kingdom among people will be a fleeting project. Your project, however, will grow in stability the more it reflects the eternal design of God. It will be a solution for the common good of the people every time, if it meets the needs of the people. Thus, let us not make a fleeting project. Rather, through a faith in the common good of people every time, let us liberate ourselves from the fear and the hatred that has been baked into our society by absolutely lighting within us the fuego of commitment and live into our universalism that so many people in our midst hunger for. For we know that empathy and connection are the fundamental strengths of our society, and that perhaps together we could share not just a country and a land, but a theology as well. Ahora contaré hasta 12, y tú te callas, y me voy. Now I'll count to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go."
The work of the church depends on us, our generosity of time, wisdom, and financial resources. We invite you to give generously to support the ongoing work of the church. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared values.
voy a reír, voy a bailar, vivir, vivir, la 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 la. Voy a reír, voy a gozar, vivir, vivir, la 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 la. A veces llega la lluvia para limpiar las heridas. A veces solo una gota puede vencer la sequía. ¿Y para qué llorar? ¿Para qué? Si vuelve una pena, se olvida. ¿Y para qué sufrir? ¿Para qué? Si vuelve esa vida, hay que vivirla. La, la, le. Voy a reír, voy a bailar, vivir, vivir, la 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 la. Voy a reír, voy a gozar, vivir, vivir, la 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 la. Peace is the generous, tranquil contribution of all to the good of all. Peace is dynamism. Peace is generosity. It is right and it is duty. Voy a vivir el momento para entender el destino. Voy a escuchar el silencio para encontrar el camino. ¿Y para qué llorar? ¿Para qué? Si vuelve una pena, se olvida. ¿Y para qué sufrir? ¿Para qué? Si vuelve una pena, se olvida. La, la, le. Voy a reír, voy a bailar, vivir, vivir, la, 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 la. Voy a reír, voy a gozar, vivir, vivir, la, 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 la. I don't want to be an anti against anybody. I simply want to be the builder of a great affirmation, the affirmation of God, who loves us and who wants to save us. These were words said by Oscar Romero. Voy a reír, voy a bailar, vivir, vivir, la 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 la. Voy a reír, voy a gozar, vivir, vivir, la 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 la.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise as you are willing and able for our closing hymn, number 1028 in the teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fuego of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fuego of commitment fulfillment sets our mind and souls ablaze. When our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way. When we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fuego of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
This week, I invite you to notice how any of that hatred has clouded even a little bit of your open heart and your open mind. This week, may you be more loving than last. Go in peace.